Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Train to Hunt podcast. I'm your host, Kenton Claremont, and I'm super stoked for today's podcast because Ryan and I finally get to hit the record button on a conversation that we've had probably 20 times in the last 10 years or so, and that is just a conversation about gear and what we should bring and what we're going to split and what we're going to do different this time as opposed to the last hunt we went on. So I'm excited about it because I think we have a lot to offer in terms of experience when it comes to what gear you should be bringing and what gear to leave back. This is just our opinion, and I know there's a lot of them out there, but I've listened to a lot of the gear podcasts lately, and we are real similar with just a few exceptions. For those of you out there that are just looking for a podcast that gives you a really good idea about what to think about as far as what gear to be putting in your pack for maybe it's your first time going on a backcountry hunt. Maybe you've done it before and got it wrong and are just looking for some advice. This is the podcast. So you guys make sure that you leave comments, subscribe, and check out traintohunt.com for any other information you might be looking for, especially some training information. We have some great membership options there on the site and some gear that you may be looking for your lucky shirt or just another workout shirt. So, all right, you guys, without further ado, let's get this podcast rolling, and here is Ryan Claremont and myself talking about gear. I'm Kenton Claremont, and you're listening to the Train to Hunt podcast. Dude, there he is. He's coming in. Get ready.
You guys, welcome to the show. It's a special show today. I know coming into September, most people are not going to be having all this time to sit and listen to podcasts. Some of our Weekend Warrior listeners will definitely be listening to podcasts during their work weeks, but Ryan and I decided to put together a podcast where we just talk about gear, and the difference between what you would take on a 12-day drop hunt where you got everything you're going to live, to keep you alive for the next 12 days in your backpack versus a base camp style, like elk camp or deer camp style of hunting where you can drive to this base camp and you're staying in wall tents and you're just kind of going out from there, maybe doing some spike camping, but for the most part, you're able to take in a bunch of supplies that you necessarily wouldn't be able to take in if you were living off your back and having to carry all those supplies. And then we also wanted to cover gear for the Weekend Warrior, which is most of us. Let's face it, like most of us have these things called jobs that we have to report to every Monday through Friday, and then if we're lucky enough, we can maybe take a Friday and a Monday off and get 4 days to go out and hunt. And we want to talk about the gear and our just kind of give you our advice and our 2 bits on what we think that would look like in contrast to a drop hunt as well. So we're going to cover a bunch today. We did in the show notes, we did include these packing lists that we're going to be talking about, which is a 12-day sheep hunt. And this is the packing list that Ryan and I used, that Ryan put together and sent to me, and we both used to do our sheep hunt last year. And then a recent one that Ryan put together for a moose hunt that him and my dad are going on. My dad just retired this year, and him and Ryan are going to go hunt the Alaska moose, and he put a list together for that. And then we don't have a list for the Weekend Warrior, but we'll just kind of wing that and give you our 2 bits on that. So, first of all, Ryan, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah. Hey, good to be here. And it's about time we just, press the record button on all these conversations that we have over the phone.
You got that right, man. Hours and hours, right? Just sitting on the phone talking about, what's necessary, what's not. How many times have I asked you this question? Hey man, what are you taking for fill in the blank, right?
Right.
And how are we going to divide up the tent and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right into it and start with, I think, I don't know where we can put this stuff on the list of importance, but let's start with just gear. I'm going to hand the ball off to you and let you start, and we'll just talk about our layering system and so let's start there, Ryan. What would you start? Let's start with the multi-day sheep hunt and work our way to the weekend warrior.
Okay. So for those that are going to be following along or can look at the packing list, first I'll explain how I organize the packing list. It's obviously broken down into categories, as you see, shooting, clothing, and clothing is worn, what I'm going to be wearing, and then what I have packed in my backpack. And then it goes to optics, field dressing, kill kit, shelter, cooking, like what I'm going to use to cook my food out there, and then the other category is just miscellaneous. So talk about clothing.
Ryan, right. Real quick, do you put in your miscellaneous? You put that's where you put your filtration system and that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, that's where I'm putting. Yep, filtration, GPS, backpack.
Okay.
Just yep.
Okay.
But so as far as we'll talk about clothing first, because the thing about clothing, and I think has changed the most in the last 20 years or so that been hunting seriously, is the fact that you only have to take what you're wearing. Now, in your pack, you'll probably have your base layer if you're not going to be wearing those. If it's warm the day you're going in, you'll probably have your rain gear, your rain top, and your rain pants in your backpack. Your puffy jacket, again, if it's not too cold, and then maybe gloves, and that's about it. Maybe a couple pair of underwear, a couple pairs of socks, and that varies depending on who you are and just how often you like to change your underwear or change your socks. But so on this packing list, I took 2 extra pair of underwear.
And this is how many days, Ryan? This is 12 days, right?
So yeah, this was for 12 days. We got dropped off on the 8th and got picked up on the 19th.
So every 6 days changing them skivvies.
Yeah, about every 4 actually, because I'm wearing one and then I have two others in my pack.
Okay.
So about every 4 days or so.
Do you use those every time you go out? Like, do you find that you're using both? You're making sure that every 4 days you're wiping up and changing them skivvies, huh?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's nothing feels better than taking a field shower with baby wipes, putting a new pair of socks and underwear on. You feel like a new man.
That's true. That is a fact, Jack.
Yeah.
There's nothing better than you can't. It's literally like going out in the field and working hard all day, bucking hay or whatever, and coming home and taking that long hot shower. It's kind of the same feeling. I mean, only it's baby wipes and new underwear and socks. That's it.
Yeah, that's it. So that's basically it. That's packed, and again, that's what's nice about all the quality clothing that's being produced right now by some of the top companies out there. Like we typically use, we're strictly using Cryptek gear, and you only need 1 pair of pants. And that's one thing I've learned the most probably in these backpacking, backcountry hunts is I used to bring 2 pairs of pants and one would just sit in my pack the whole time. So 1 pair of pants is all you need.
Yeah.
Then I always have a midweight, like a base layer top with a midweight, which is usually like the quarter zip. And then obviously wearing underwear, socks, boots, and a hat. That's what you're wearing out. So
on that gear list, Ryan, you mentioned it earlier about rain gear and puffy jackets and that kind of stuff. So 2 questions. One, let's just start here. Hood or no hood as far as your midweight and puffy jacket?
Well, so my midweight has a hood, and I could do without, honestly, as far as the midweight goes, as far as the hood.
Yeah.
but the one I wear, the Sherpa, has a hood, and I do find myself using it sometimes. But my puffy jacket, I love having a hood on my puffy jacket.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much more heat retention you have when you throw that puffy jacket on and it has a hood. You throw that hood on and it feels like you just gained 5 to 10 degrees.
I agree. I think I kind of compare it to this. Like if you're cold and you're laying in bed, you throw the covers on yourself and you're going to get warmer. But if you throw those covers over your head, how much faster and how much warmer you feel immediately if you're just kind of cocooned, right? I agree. I think that the puffy jacket it's a must to have a hood. You don't have to use it, but when you want it, it's there. And I know we're talking to most guys who are hunting in September and they're like, oh, I don't use that stuff because it's too hot and the weather's going to be fine. If that's you, that's great. Like if you know that you're not going to need, it's never going to drop below 50 degrees and during the day it's going to be hot. That's great. I still would advise you take some sort of a stocking hat or something just in case, because you never know. You guys, anybody out there that is experienced in the mountains knows that the mountain weather can change like on a dime. Anybody who hasn't had a lot of experience in the mountains, whether it be any mountains, whether it be BC or the Western or especially the Alaska mountain ranges, you really should be prepared for anything. I've heard, other guys talk about, here's another thing, Ryan. I've heard a lot of people, some guys talk about, I don't take rain gear. I just set up my shelter if it's going to rain, or I'm just going to set it underneath a tree or whatever. I think that personally, like using the Poseidon rain gear, I don't know what it weighs. It doesn't weigh much. And, I typically, no matter what, in my day pack, no matter whether I'm weekend warrior in it, no matter what, if I'm going out hunting, I have a puffy jacket and I have my Poseidon rain gear, top and bottom, in the lid of my pack, because it's just insurance for me. You're not going to catch me out there without rain gear, because if it rains, you're going to want rain gear. You're not going to want to be scrambling to set up your shelter, or I'm not going to want to. I would rather pack that Poseidon rain gear, or any rain gear for that matter, and sit it out. And so that was my other question to you, was like, is there any circumstance that you can think of, other than maybe hunting Africa, hunting these Western big game animals, that you wouldn't bring rain gear?
Well, not really. Down here in Arizona, there are instances, if I'm just going out for the day, where I probably won't bring out rain gear. And there's instances where I go out and I only bring a jacket, because it just rains down here so rarely in the fall and winter that if it does rain, and I know it's going to be a quick shower and probably be past, so I don't take pants if I'm going to go out for the day. But I always have a rain jacket in my pack. It's like you said, it's so light, takes up a little room, and if you need it, it's there. If you don't, it doesn't. It's not. It's like it's a heavy burden in your pack.
Yeah. So we've covered gear pretty well. And how does that differ? Like, how's your packing list going to differ from say drop camp to base camp?
So for base camp, like if we're talking specifically clothing, not very much, honestly, not very much. The only thing on my 12-day packing list for our sheep hunt versus say a drop or a base camp where you can drive to and hunt out of, I may not bring like gaiters. I love wearing gaiters, but it's just one of those things that I probably won't need. And just given the terrain that we hunt those moose in, I don't necessarily need gaiters like I would hunting sheep in Alaska, you're going to be crossing creeks over and over and over again, and you want to keep your pants dry. So, so this moose hunt, I'm not going to bring. I think they might be on the list, but I'm having, just pack my bags. I'm not going to bring the gauge for my boots.
Well, the nice thing about drop camp is that you can just, or a base camp is you can bring them just in case, right? Like,
yeah,
you can bring them, and if you don't use them, it's not like you have to pack around on your back.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's really, when it comes down to it, the difference between a drop hunt where, a bush pilot or a boat is dropping you off and saying, we'll see you in 12 days, and a base camp where you can drive in and out, go to town and come back, is that, you have to be very mindful about what you're taking on a drop camp, because, that's what you are going to be packing around for the next 12 days, unless you just decide at some point, I do not need this, this stainless steel frying pan. I'm going to go back to the airstrip and just drop it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, but that's a good point. And I think that I'm with you. As far as gear goes, I'm going to wear the same, gear, and use this. How about this? I'm going to use the same layering system, essentially, no matter what hunt I'm doing and how long it's going to be.
Yeah.
The difference being that if I'm in a base camp, I may have the luxury of being able to not have to put on those, wet pair of socks that you would have to put them on. You have to put on in a drop camp and just walk them dry. But
you can bring extra, is basically what you're saying. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So, as far as the weekend warrior guy goes, I'm with you. A layering system. You got your merino wools, and then you got your pants of choice. I typically like to use like not a real heavy pant, but kind of a midweight pant. In the early elk season, when it's hotter, I will typically just use a real lightweight, like a Valhalla style pant. And then upper body, I will almost always start out in the mornings with a base layer on up top, depending on how much hiking we have to do and whether it's uphill. I will start a little cold. So if we have some hiking to do and it's uphill, I'll just typically have like maybe just enough on so that I'm not freezing cold, but I'll start cold and then walk up, and then once we get to the top or where we're going, that's when I'll layer up a little bit, because typically you're going to be sweating, so I'll throw on a base layer and maybe just a puffy jacket and retain some of that heat so that I don't get a chill. The one thing that I've kind of learned throughout the year is that two things: start chilly, which means when you start, you should be a little cold and walk yourself warm. And two, as soon as you get there, you're going to cool off really quick. And so you want to start putting like either the merino wool or your midweight, or, at least at very minimum, change your t-shirt. And then, especially if you're going to be sitting around doing some glassing at that point, and don't wait to get cold again before you put, some sort of insulation on, because typically if you wait to get cold and then you change, you're going to have to get up and maybe move around in order to warm back up. So cool off maybe just a little bit, and you'll cool off by just changing your shirt, especially if it's cold out. But then throughout the day, like it just depends on the weather, right? Like, if it's warm out, then I'll typically just hunt in base layer. And I do wear a long sleeve base layer, and if it's hot, I'll just pull the sleeves up. I don't necessarily think that you need to wear short sleeve and long sleeve base layer. Just in case it gets warm, you can take the long sleeve off. I just use the long sleeve. I use the same midweight as you do, the Sherpa. Luckily I still have the collar, the one without the hood. So I usually just use that, and then I have my puppy jacket and rain gear in my hood of my pack, and so I feel like I'm like that system right there: base layer, midweight, puppy jacket, and rain gear has got us through basically everything, right? I mean, everything from 90-degree weather to snow.
Yep.
We've basically used that system right there. And the only time I can remember being freezing cold, like, oh, we are really in trouble here, is because we typically hiked up above sheep and we're sitting on them and we forgot parts of our layering system.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
we left camp to go after those sheep without bringing any clothes, basically.
Yeah. You know, we got up there. Oh, let's just sneak up here. And you get up there, you think you're gonna get up on them, and they're gonna offer a shot real quick, and you end up sitting there for 2 hours. Oh yeah, and by the way, in those 2 hours, the freaking storm blows in and starts raining on you, and now you're wet and cold and
that was 5 hours, Kenton.
Oh,
we got above. You're talking about Terry's sheep, right?
Yeah, Terry's. Yeah.
We got above those sheep at 12:30 midnight, and Terry didn't pull the trigger until 5:30 in the morning. And it rained.
We were running laps.
Right. We were doing sprints up and down the hill, just over the ridge from where the sheep could see us.
Yeah, that was so film worthy. I don't know why we never got a single like picture or no footage of that, but that was looking back, it's funny. Just like peeking over the edge. Okay, he's still there. Still too dark to verify. So we come back and just sprint up and down these rocky mountains just so that we can warm up. And then at one point, remember, that didn't work. We had to pull up that emergency blanket and like do a man burrito.
I know. 2 guys spooning underneath the emergency blanket while one guy kept his eye on the sheep.
Yeah, that was about as cold as I've ever been.
Yeah.
Right there. But it was our own fault because we went up light, you know, and forgot our layering system. And then that same trip, this is a good example for the layering system. That same trip, when we got off the airplane, what was it, 4 days earlier?
Yeah.
4 days earlier.
4 days, yeah.
The first thing we all did was we basically stripped down to our underwear and t-shirts.
Yeah.
Because it was 80 degrees.
Yeah, we were hiking. Our very first hike away from the airstrip was in underwear and t-shirts.
Yeah, underwear and t-shirts.
It was hot.
Yeah. So, yeah, that layering system really, in my opinion, is so versatile and so light that you don't really need to, especially on a drop hunt, you don't have to worry about. I used to think, gosh, what if for some reason my pants get shredded, you know, or like what if, you know, like, and under what, I started thinking about this a couple of years ago, and this is why I haven't been taking additional pants, because the first, on yours and mine and Dad's first hunt, I was like, oh, what if my pants get shredded? I'm going to bring another pair of pants. And I thought, yeah, man, if my pants get shredded, then like I'm in bad trouble. Like I probably fell or like took a spill and I'm not hunting anymore. You know, like this is not good. And if it gets a little tear in it, I mean, that's why we typically bring string and needle, right? That between that and just, you know, if we can sew up a laceration and we'll get to our kits, our first aid kit here. But okay, so we got gear. Now let's talk about oh, by the way, Ryan, extra boots or no? Like drop camp, are you bringing extra boots?
No. I don't bring extra boots, but I do bring camp shoes. I have just Crocs like most other people. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to get your feet. It's nice to get out of those boots at the end of a long day of hiking and put them in Crocs. That's really nice.
Or like creek crossings, right?
Earlier we did. I think the first sheep hunt, we actually took the time to take our boots off and put on Crocs or whatever to cross. But this last year, I don't think we ever stopped to take our boots off.
No, we did. We
just walked through the water.
But most of the creeks that we crossed, Ryan, were only in 10 feet, 12 feet across, and we're no higher than like maybe mid shin.
Yep. Yeah.
So if you're having to cross something that's like 20, 30 feet across, and it's going to be up, about to your knee or something like that, which is why we took our boots off the first year. Yeah. I think that those camp shoes are the way to go. And I think I honestly think Crocs are a really good way to go. I have those Vivo Barefoot shoes, and I think they're nice, but I just think the Crocs are better. I do. Yeah. Personally, I think the Crocs are they're more comfortable. I think they're more, I do like that the Vivo Barefoot, you can like basically lace them up and they're not going to come off your foot. I do like that part. Right. But they're just not they're not as comfortable.
They're a little thin on the bottom.
Yeah, they are. Hence barefoot, right?
Yeah. I mean, you step on a sharp rock and you feel it.
Yeah, you're gonna feel it. On a base camp, are you bringing extra boots?
No.
Yeah. You got your boots. You're wearing them.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. I would probably, if I have them, I'd probably bring extra boots to a base camp, just because, man, if I get into a situation where my boots are just soaked, I'm not gonna have to wear my boots dry. I'll just wear my extra boots for a day, and then my other boots will be dry. I mean, heck, in a base camp, you could probably bring a boot dryer,
Yeah, right.
So I guess you probably don't need some extra boots, but, all right. So let's move on to the next thing. What's the next thing on the list, Ryan?
That's optics.
Okay. Optics. Now what's your opinion on optics?
So always bring binos. I always bring binoculars. A 10 by 42. A lot of guys down here that hunt goose deer roll with 15s. I don't have a set of 15s. I wish I did. I want to get a set specifically for goose deer, but everything else that I hunt, I hunt with 10 by 42s. I do wear a bino chest pack. I have the Alaska Guide Creations Kodiak chest pack, and that works really well because it can hold my binos, holds my rangefinder, and then it has a couple little small zippers on the side that hold like my lens brush and a cloth and just things like that. I typically bring a little video camera. My tripod is I have a ProMaster carbon tripod. I have an Outdoorsman's pan head on there. And then, like I say, a rangefinder. So those things go on every hunt. My tripod, my binos, my rangefinder, my tripod, my chest pack for my binos, and a little video camera. The thing that will vary is the spotting scope. Mm-hmm. If I'm hunting an animal that I have to age or there's some size restriction on him, I'm absolutely going to bring a spotting scope, like sheep hunting. You have to they have to be full curl, so you just can't go running after every sheep you see. And it's so important to be able to look at that sheep through a spotting scope and figure out from a long ways away whether you're going to take that 3 or 4 mile hike over there to get closer. So other than sheep, like this moose hunt I'm going on, if any bull, I'm not going to bring a spotting scope because I'm not picky. If it's a bull, if it's a paddle bull, I'm going after him. And I can figure that out from a long ways away with my binos. So
yeah.
How about you?
I don't take binos into certain elk hunting areas. I don't. Like our spot that we elk hunt. Yeah. I don't take binos in there because it's any bull, and if it has horns, I can tell basically just looking at them. Because you're not going to see elk. Typically, you're not going to have an opportunity to glass any further than maybe 400 or 500 yards. Yeah. But and then when you're hunting them in the trees, and we're talking top pin areas. that where it's like, if you get anything where you're shooting, using anything but your top 10, it's really, really, atypical. It's just not going to happen. But other than that, I bring my binos, rangefinders for sure. And I'm with you as far as like your optic choices.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that, just to piggyback off what you said, a rangefinder, or not a rangefinder, a spotting scope is nothing more than how do I put this? It's going to do nothing more than save you walking time. Like, if you have to judge an animal, judge its age, its horn size, how many points it has, like, is it a 3-pointer better? Is it how many draw times does it have, or whatever? What a spotting scope's going to do for you is going to save you a ton of walking and energy. That's all it's going to do. The fact is, you could hunt Dall sheep, you could hunt moose, you could hunt mule deer, mountain mule deer without a spotting scope, but you're going to put on like maybe a third of your miles are going to be unnecessary miles, because you're going to get over there, get close enough, and go, oh, it's not big enough. Whereas if you have a spotting scope, a good spotting scope, you're going to be able to just set it up and look at it and say, you know what, we can't, it's not big enough. Think about all the miles it saved us, Ryan. Like just setting up, looking at it, and going, you know what, it's just not big enough. And you can kind of tell through the binos, right? Like by our third sheep hunt, we had kind of had a pretty decent idea about like what a banana ram horn, sheep look like versus something with some potential. Yeah. The difference is that we didn't have to lay down at night and go, gosh, maybe we should have went over there and looked at that ram, because we were able to throw up the spotting scope and both of us verify, that's a small ram. Like there's no use in trying to get closer to that one because it's too small. So that's typically what I would tell people is that, number one, if you have to judge and you're in big country, take a spotting scope. It's going to save you a ton of energy.
Speaking Dall sheep specifically, I would leave my binos at home before I would leave a spotting scope at home.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You could almost get away with hunting Dall sheep without binos, because although there are instances where you'll find a sheep through your binos and go, holy cow, I had no idea that dude was there.
Yeah.
But more often than not, you'll be hiking or get up up on top looking over some area with your naked eye, see some white dots, and then you could break out your spotting scope and verify. So spotting scope is probably the most important piece of optic you have, maybe outside the scope on your rifle when you're hunting Dall sheep.
Agreed. I think that if you're if you're patient enough, or if you and I went on another sheep hunt, I would probably, say one of us can bring a pair of binos and one of us bring a spotting scope. That's it. Unlike what we did last time. And I like having, binos just because I like glassing, and typically if we're just looking around, it's nice to have, a pair of binos just to kind of look around and look for other things other than just Dall sheep, caribou and whatnot. But, I would think that especially if you were hunting with somebody, you could get away with, between the two of you, have a pair of binos but you have to have that spotting scope for sure. I'm with you 100%.
Yep. And that's something that this year, I don't know if people know this, but I brought, an 80 millimeter Swarovski, and you had an 80 millimeter Swarovski. So we had two spotting scopes. That won't happen again. Ever.
No, way too much.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what I was going to tell you. I was going to say, I highly recommend those chest packs, especially if you're going to be doing a bunch of hiking. Get a good chest pack. Spend the extra money on a really good chest pack. It doesn't matter what kind of brand. Typically just something that's not going to bounce, something that's going to hold tight to your chest. And, I like the Alaska Guide too, because, it has the extra compartments for the wind checker and the different things. But, as far as your optics go, definitely get a chest pack. Don't just sling those things over your neck. I typically, if I am hunting, if I do bring a pair of binos into elk country where there's not a ton of glassing opportunity, I'll take a really small pair of binos, just a really small pair that I can stick in my pocket, and I'll just pull them out of my pocket. We're talking about the binos that are not much bigger than a rangefinder. And I'll just pull them out of my pocket if I absolutely need a pair of binos, and that's if I'm bow hunting. Obviously if you're rifle hunting, I just pull up my rifle scope and check it out. But if you have a small pair of binos you can just stick in your pocket, that works too. That's it, Ryan. That's all I got as far as binos go. I know it seems like a lot of guys out there right now. How many guys out there do you think are saying, man, you're bringing a tripod and binos and spotting scope, and a camera? That's like half your weight right there. Well, yeah, typically your optics are going to be quite a bit of your daily pack's weight, but I think we covered it. It's worth it,
Yeah. So. Yeah. The only other thing that I didn't mention is the bino adapter, so you can glass off your tripod. Now, you experienced, I let you use that setup that I have, glassing off the tripod, and what do you think? How much different is it glassing off a tripod than freehand?
Well, the fact of the matter is you can pick up everything when you're not shaking. You don't realize how much you shake, right? You just don't. Like coming off that tripod and having that, and also that pan head that you have is so smooth that I guess to put it, the easiest way to put it is just that you feel like rather than feel like you're glassing, where typically my feeling on glassing is I got to hurry up and get through the area so that I can see if there's something in this grid that I'm looking for, because I know that I only have maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes. If I can sit down and put my elbows on my knees, I got maybe a little bit longer. But then I'm going to have to take a break and shake it out a little bit before I go back to glassing. And, with that tripod system, you just basically sit down, stick the tripod on your lap, adjust it, and all you have to do is just keep your eyes open, and look around. Unbelievable. In fact, remember, I was looking through mine, and you were like, oh, there's a caribou. And I'm like, man, I'm not seeing these caribou. Yeah. And you're like, right there, here, this switch, and we switched, and suddenly, like, these caribou just kind of came out of nowhere, right? So it's completely worth the wait to bring a really good glassing system. Yeah, really good glass, a good pan head on a tripod, a really good tripod. It could make the difference, like in mule deer country, especially, and like coos deer, maybe not moose and sheep, but it could be the difference between actually killing something and not. Like you may not see it if you don't have good optics.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
And I've got a story about that. The last time I was moose hunting with Terry.
Yeah.
We were at camp. We'd just gotten camp set up, and it was getting late in the evening, so we were basically just going to kind of glass from camp and make plans to go out the next morning. We said, well, we're at the top of a ridge looking down into a draw. We said, well, let's just glass this little area. And so Terry grabs his binos and he just starts freehanding, sitting in a chair. So he's as steady as you can get pretty much with being freehand. I took the time to set up my tripod, get out my bino adapter, put my binos on my tripod, sit down, and start glassing. So he'd already been glassing for a few minutes by the time I set up my tripod and got behind my binos. And within 30 seconds of me looking through my binos, I picked up three moose. And he didn't see him. And even after I saw him and tried to walk him into him, he still couldn't see him.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah. Long story short, there were 5 moose down in the bottom there that he couldn't see and I could see. And we ended up getting a stock on him and got within rifle range of him, but just didn't work out. But that happened. That sold me. That was one of my first times. That was 6 years ago, using that kind of a setup, and I was sold right there when Terry couldn't see a moose.
Yeah.
And I could see 5 of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Sold, right?
So,
Sold.
Yeah.
All right.
I always bring it.
Yeah. Hit them. Do it. Bring it. You won't regret it. And it's gonna cost you a little bit, but you'll typically, once the money's spent and it's paid for and you're using it, you won't regret it for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
So what's next?
Field dressing. And this is pretty simple. So my kill kit just has my license and tag, has a little bit of 550 cord in it, has my game bags, which I've used tag bags forever, and that's typically what I use. On the sheep hunt, I use those bomb bags, the boned out meat bags, and man, those were absolutely perfect size for sheep quarters, and they worked out great. And then a knife, I use the Outdoor Edge replaceable blade knife, and I just, ever since I started using Havalon a while ago, and the only thing I didn't like about Havalon is that when you start getting into that, the hind quarter, you start getting in between bones, I tend to get a little bit aggressive, and it's probably my own fault, but I break blades a lot. So I just wanted something that was a little bit more heavy duty. Mm-hmm. And when Outdoor Edge came out with their replaceable blade knife, I jumped all over it, and I haven't looked back. So that's all I bring. I don't, like on the sheep hunt, I didn't bring a saw, just it's extra weight. So I didn't bring a saw. Now for the base camp hunt and hunting moose, I am going to bring a bone saw. So, that's the only difference there for a drop hunt like our sheep versus a base camp.
Mm-hmm. Is a saw.
Is a saw. That's it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. What's the 550 cord for?
So when we get everything back to camp, we can I can hang stuff up if we can find some brush or like in our sheep hunt. I don't know how much of that 550 cord we use, but I always have 550 cord on me because it has so many different uses.
Yeah.
That I always keep it in my kill kit just because that's where I keep it.
Yeah.
Base camp, we usually hang up a meat pole like we did on that elk hunt a couple years ago. Mm-hmm. And you can use that 550 cord to tie up your meat pole and also to tie up your quarters and hang your quarters from the meat pole. Yep.
That's exactly what I think that 550 cord is there for, right? Is in hopes that you can hang up meat somewhere.
Yep.
So I guess the only thing I would add, I typically use, so I had a custom knife, a buddy of mine, Cody, had made for me. I use that. It's just a straight edge, really, really small, probably 6-inch, great knife. And in addition to that, I bring a fillet knife, like the edge, fillet knife. It's just it's an orange handle, and it's just to get around the bones and that kind of stuff if you need to bone out the meat.
Yeah.
And then I have my license and tag and some 550 cord, and typically what I'll do is I'll throw like a bar or something in my kill kit just because I'm a believer that it's just because I've done it so many times that once you've killed your animal and you get up there, once you start digging into, getting that animal, you're basically committed. You're probably not going to eat. You're typically not going to eat anything until you get back to camp or get back to where you're going to, after that meat's hung up, that's when you'll probably eat, whether it be hung right there at the kill site or back to camp and hung. And then, then that's when you'll typically eat next. So, I think it's a good practice to put some calories in your kill kit, whether it be just a bar, like a maybe 300-400 calorie bar in your kill kit. And when you shoot something, you can just clean out you just, as you're waiting for it, everybody usually gives their animal a little bit of time before they go check on it. And so whether you think you hit them good or not, meaning if you hit it, when you shot them, you got them and they fell right in their tracks, or you shot them and it was a good shot, heart-lung shot, and they took off, or maybe you shot them a little far back, or you don't feel like it's a good shot and they took off. In all of those scenarios, you're probably going to give them a little bit of time. That's a good time to sit down and eat, because whether you go up there and start tracking and it's an all-day track, or you go up there and they're dead right in their tracks where you shot them, once you start tracking, or once you start gutting that animal or field dressing that animal, you're not going to be eaten until it's hung, or found. So that's the only thing I would add to my kill kit.
Yeah.
Is bring some food, because you're so excited. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
your adrenaline pumped, you're so excited, or you're so like disappointed, or you're anxious in some way, shape, or form about, gosh, did I hit him good? That when you're sitting there waiting, replaying this moment in your head 100,000 times, you should be eating and drinking your water.
Yeah.
Because you got some work to do in front of you. So
yeah.
All right, next.
We'll go to shelter. Shelter's going to vary quite a bit. For our sheep hunt, being dropped off for 12 days, living out of your backpack, you're going to want the lightest, most bomb-proof shelter that you can get your hands on. Now, that being said, a bomb-proof shelter isn't going to be the lightest shelter ever made, right?
Well, so, typically no.
Typically no. But I think this last year we got our hands on, to date, the probably best shelter we've ever used.
Agreed. For two guys. Agreed.
2 guys. And it was absolutely perfect. And the shelter itself only weighs 21 ounces. It's called Hyperlight Mountain Gear. It's an Ultimate 4. So it's one of those pyramid type tents with just a single center pole. And it's made out of that Cuban fiber. And man, it is super lightweight, super tough and durable. Doesn't stretch because it's that Cuban fiber material. And once you get that thing set up, it was nice. And it's the first time you and I have hunted together in a floorless shelter.
Yep.
You've been hunting with floorless shelters for a little while, with running the sawtooth, the Cafardo sawtooth and stuff. And
yep.
So you were pretty comfortable and kind of knew what you were getting into. But it was my first time hunting with a floorless shelter, and I'll tell you, I loved it. I absolutely loved it. We just used bivy. We bought these bivvies called Titanium Goat is the company. We both bought their Kestrel bivy, which they had on sale. It's waterproof on the bottom, and the top is just this breathable material. And we put our sleeping pad inside the bivy and crawled inside the bivy with our sleeping bag, and it worked out perfect, man. I loved it. The shelter itself. Now, if anybody out there is right now looking up Hyperlight Mountain Gear, the shelter does not come with stakes or poles, so you got to buy those separately. The pole I went with is by a company called Ruta Locura. It's out of Utah. And so I got their carbon fiber pole. It only weighs 7.5 ounces. And then the stakes I went with to stake out the tent are the MSR Cyclones. And those are those super long, kind of corkscrew looking pegs. The reason why I did is it does have a tendency to blow pretty hard. It can anyway in the Brooks Range. So, so I wanted something that would keep that tent down in the ground. And so I went with some little beefier poles, little heavier. But the main reason is, we saved so much weight with the pole in the shelter that I figured giving up a little bit of weight on the poles for that security was worth it. Total weight on the shelter was 5.5 pounds, and that was split between 2 people. So that's the best we've ever done.
Yeah, and to your point about the stakes. Remember our first overnight in the Brooks with you and I and Dad, and we woke up at 2:30 in the morning, and we had a tarp style tent that we just brought and set up, and it was a teepee style tent, and we just found the stakes in and went to sleep. And about 2:30 in the morning, we woke up and we're like, why is it raining in the tent? It's like raining and our tent's flopped over. And I think that we would have avoided that for sure if we would have had those cyclone stakes. And so it doesn't matter how well your tent, is going to hold up as far as like it's tear resistant and not going to stretch and that kind of stuff. If your tent spikes aren't going to keep them in the ground. So, and those cyclones were, I think they might have been the key to the success of the tent because we were able to keep it down, and we survived everything. That snowstorm and all the wind through that one pass that we stayed at night 3, and plenty of room, and by far the lightest thing we had, by far. So,
The other thing in that category, I put my sleeping bag, my air mattress. I run the sleeping bag I bought quite a while ago. As a matter of fact, the company I bought it from doesn't exist anymore. It was called Go Light. The owner has since kind of opened up his own other company called My Trail, but it's a Go Light down sleeping bag, 20-degree down sleeping bag, so pretty run-of-the-mill. Air mattress, I run the Thermarest Neo Air Light, I think it is called. So it's pretty lightweight, I think 12 ounces or something like that. That's what I use for air mattress. And then something I bought last year and used it for the first time on that sheep hunt was the Sea to Summit pillow. And I'm here to tell you, the best money I've spent on a piece of gear in a long, long time. And you bought one too, right?
Yeah. I was not a believer. I was like,
that's right.
I
remember
that? Yeah.
I talked you into it.
Yep. I was like, I don't know. I was blowing them up I was in the store. I was blowing them up and laying on the ground and like, oh man, this is not going to work. Like, but it feels okay. Maybe it'll be better out there. And, I agree. Probably the best, it's $50 that I spent for new gear in the last 5 years, probably.
Yeah. Everything's nice. Yeah. I highly recommend it.
Yeah, agreed. As far as my sleep system, very similar to Ryan's. Baby sack, good blow up air mattress. It's just really lightweight, Sea to Summit. And I run a Mountain Hardware sleeping bag that, it's a mummy bag. It works great for me. And then the Sea to Summit pillow.
That's right. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but just to make a point, you run that Ultra Lamina, don't you?
For
the sleeping bag.
Sleep pad? Yeah.
No, sleeping bag.
Oh,
yours is synthetic, because yours is synthetic.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yep. It's synthetic. Yep.
So that's the difference. You run synthetic, I run down. What are your thoughts on that? Because
I tell you that the reason I run synthetic is because I don't want to run into a situation where my sleeping bag's wet. Like, honestly, I can't think of anything. I'm sure there's worse. There's tons of bad scenarios, but man, it would suck to have to crawl into a soaking wet sleeping bag.
Yeah.
And typically down doesn't dry as quick as synthetic. Not that synthetic doesn't get wet, but that's why because I've had, it's kind of, there's the jury's still out. How about that? But I kind of buy into, I'm in the camp with the synthetics, just because if it gets wet, it typically dries a little faster and it'll hold, and it's always worked for me. So why switch?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And I was pretty nervous about getting a down bag, and I've ran that same down bag now for quite a while, and I've never had a problem with it. I always, if I'm not sleeping in it, it is inside of a Cedar Summit, a Cedar Summit little lightweight dry bag. So it's a compressible bag specifically for sleeping bags, and I just put it in that. Like I said, if I'm not sleeping in it, it's in there, and I've never had a problem with it.
And I think it's a good point, Ryan. We both did that. Just like, there's no way, because we don't have rain covers for our packs.
Right.
And so we put our sleeping bags in waterproof bags.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that everybody should consider, especially if you're running down or synthetic or not. Any bag. If you got a sleeping bag, if you're going in and there's a chance for weather, even if it's not chance for weather, just get a Cedar Summit or a Seal Line or some sort of waterproof bag, and just instead and use it as a stuff sack.
Yeah.
And just stick it in there and compress it and use that, because then, I mean, if everything else is wet, if your sleep bag's dry, you're going to be happy, So,
yeah.
I put everything. I think I put everything in a waterproof bag. My clothes, my socks, underwear, everything goes in either Ziplocs or a waterproof bag or both.
Yeah. You do.
Yeah. So, sleep systems. Then at base camp, it's, you can typically get away with. I know you and Dad are using that big old Alaskan, right?
Yeah. We're using that 8-man Alaskan guide tent with a giant vestibule. The tent itself weighs 35 pounds. So
yeah, and I think that would be the biggest difference, honestly, in my packing list would be your sleep system, your shelter, your sleep bag, your pad. Like, that's the biggest difference between a drop and a base camp.
For sure, you can sleep on a cot when you're sleeping out of a base camp.
You can bring a stove and just put a chimney through the roof of your canvas tent and build a fire.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It probably is the biggest difference between the two.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. Food's going to be quite a bit of difference, but the shelter is definitely the biggest. So, all right, next.
Cooking. So I run just a little canister stove. I don't have a jet boil or, the MSR Wind Master or anything like that. Wind burner stove, or just a little, it's made by a company called Soto, and I run the Soto Windmaster.
Yep.
So it's just a little canister stove. It's super light, screws onto the canister, and then I have a little pot, like a 1-liter pot. I do bring a cup for coffee. I don't want to drink coffee out of the pot that I'm boiling water in. So I do bring a little Cedar Summit insulated cup. I have a little plastic spoon that folds open. I think MSR makes that. Usually bring, for that sheep hunt, it was kind of a funny story on the fuel canisters. We went into to Right Air service, waiting for our airplane. They had to put some stickers on our fuel canisters or something. And so they got that all done, and we got kind of not rerouted, but we went into a different door to get everything ready, met up with our pilot, went out to the airplane and got on the airplane, and we got about 15, 20 minutes in the air up from the airport, and the pilot got a call and said, "Hey, we still have all the fuel that these guys brought." So we had no fuel. So thank God, Daniel, our pilot, he knew a guy that had a little Connex, I guess, on the way there, I think it was in Fort Yukon, that was full of fuel canisters, because he flies people out all the time too. So he's like, well, I'll just give my buddy a call and see if we can borrow a couple of them. So thank God he did that. Otherwise, we were going to have to turn around and lose about an hour and a half or 2 hours. So, but on that hunt, we each had a large one, I think, didn't we, Kenton?
Yeah, we had too much, but we did end up both with like the big canister of fuel. And what my thoughts on the fuel, Ryan, is just that drop hunt or base camp, bring more fuel than you think you'll need and just leave it. Because if you run it, like, we should have just left the canister at the airstrip.
Yeah.
But we didn't. But even if you're like, I don't know, it's going to be pretty close, just bring an extra small one and leave it at the airstrip. Because if you run into a spot where you have to have it for some reason, whether it be for warmth or whatever, I mean, you shouldn't have to have an extra fuel can, but if you run into it, you can just leave it at the strip or leave it at base camp. But typically, we could have got away with each of us having a small one.
Yeah.
Right. Because we're doing hot water in the morning and in the evening, and that's it.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we typically, this is the second time we've done this, is brought a little Yeti cooler, and put some food in there, put, some things that we wanted to leave at the airstrip. We just left there inside that cooler at the airstrip, along with another tent. We set up another tent at the airstrip just in case, everything went south, our tent got shredded, who knows, but it's always nice to have that security blanket waiting for you at the airstrip, when you get back, or halfway through your hunt, everything goes wrong and you need to go back to the airstrip to get some more stuff. Typically, the airplane has room. If the airplane has room and you're under weight capacity, bring it, leave it at the airstrip. That's my 2 cents on that.
And it does a couple things. One is it's a security blanket. It's a place where you just leave your fresh food that you're going to eat at the end of the trip, and it also lets other people know that there's people in here already.
Yep. Yep.
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
So that's cooking. Pretty simple. I'm sure most people that have their own system, but that's what we run. Miscellaneous is everything else. So a little GPS, backpack. I always run a water bladder. I like a 3-liter water bladder. Platypus is what I use. And I think those things are bomb proof. I've been really happy with them. I carry a water bottle as well, because I like to mix up like my Hydrate Wilderness Athlete, Hydrate and Recover, inside the water bottle and not in my water bladder.
Mm-hmm.
So I bring both. I carry a 6-liter bladder as well, made by MSR. I think it's called the Dromedary. But that's for camp water. So if we're setting up a camp and we need water, we'll just go down to the creek with our big bladders. I know you run the Platypus tank, I think it is called.
Yep.
So we fill up those. I think both of them are 6 liters. So we have 12 liters right there for some water to boil, and fill up our not canteens, but our water bottles, our bladders, and everything like that. So that's been pretty key. Other things on there, handkerchief. I always carry a handkerchief for whatever reason. Early in the mornings when it's cold, my nose runs, and I'll just have a handkerchief in my pocket. Toilet paper and wet wipes. Always have those.
For obvious reasons.
So baby powder. Yep. I always have a toothbrush and toothpaste. Headlamp. So always bring a headlamp. I run the Black Diamond Spot, I think it is. Man, that thing it's never let me down. And here's another thing about that Black Diamond Spot. I've had other headlamps, and that Spot is so good on batteries. I've never had a headlamp last me as long as that Spot does. And maybe there's probably ones out there, but this Spot was only $35 or $40 maybe. And I ran that headlamp for 10 full days every evening, every morning, and never had to change the batteries. So that's something to be said about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think when it comes to headlamps, you got lumens and you got how long's your battery last. That's it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We had some topo maps and some Google Earth printouts that I printed them out on 8x11 sheet of paper and then had them laminated. That's what I carried of all the areas that we wanted to hit on our sheep hunt, which came in handy.
Yeah.
Chapstick, contractor bags. I always bring a couple contractor bags. Whether I use them or not is one thing, but if it's really, really hot and we need to submerge our meat, I always like to have those thick contractor bags to put our meat in, and dunk in a creek or something just to cool them off if necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Fire starter. I always just soak cotton balls in Vaseline. I carry a lighter. I carry also a flint and steel as backup. Trekking poles. That's another thing I will never, ever, ever, ever go on a backpack hunt again without.
Ever?
Once you use them and with a heavy load on, you'll realize just how beneficial they are, right? I mean,
it takes it's like 20 to 30% of your the load off of your, it's easier. Basically, you can put 20 to 30% of the load on your arms rather than everything's on your legs and back.
Yeah.
100%. Like the trekking poles and get good trekking poles. I went with the the kind you can break them down into a really small pouch, and I just stick them in my pack. They're completely worth it, you guys. Like, if you're gonna be going on a multi-day, lots of terrain, coming out heavy, just get some trekking poles and get good ones for sure.
Yeah, this is your second pair that you bought for this sheep hunt, right?
Yep, this is my second pair, and the reason I went to a different pair is because I kind of went the cheap route the first time and ended up getting having difficulties with my poles, because when I'd actually go to put some force on them, they would telescope down. These are the telescoping kind, and you twist them instead of the lock, the flip lock. I recommend a flip lock. Anybody out there that's wondering, flip lock or twist lock, I recommend the flip lock, because the twist locks tend to, like, if you put too much pressure on them, it doesn't take long. It was one hunt. By the end of the hunt, my poles were telescoping down. So I kept them and we'll keep them around for, the kids or whatever. But as far as needing a better pair, I just decided to go with the, spend some money, and I went the other way. I think I spent like almost $200 on mine, and glad I did, because they're trekking poles that they stay in one piece, but you can break them apart, and they're held together with like a real wire, and you pull them into like a probably 6 or 8 inch like bundle, and they slip into this bag. And so both poles, the telescope, I mean, they go in and out. I don't know how quite a ways. They'll probably accommodate somebody as 6'4", 6'5". I'm only 5'10", so. But they compact into probably 8 inches by, smaller than your water bottle anyway. And so, and they're super light. So I just chucked them in my pack, and I mean, we would have made it obviously, but how I can't express how key they were in our pack out that day when we had to pack out for across the tundra and in the soggy bottoms and up the hills. And I think there was probably close to 100 times that I used those poles just to lean on and take the weight off my pack or off my shoulders.
I think the new ones you bought are Leki, Leki, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Mine are black diamond, and they're the flint locking kind, the telescoping kind. I bought those our very first sheep hunt, so I've had those since 2010. Yeah, 2010. So
yeah.
Yep.
So far I'm with you on everything. How many extra batteries do you bring extra batteries for headlamps, GPS?
I do. Just one set. So my headlamp takes 3 AAAs and my GPS takes 2 AAs. So I bring one extra set of batteries for each.
And
yep.
do you typically change the batteries need to or not at the beginning of every long hunt? Like I know I do. My headlamp still turns on, but I'll take those out and switch them out so I know they're brand new going into it.
Yep, that's what I do too, Kevin. Yep.
So let's talk. We just got a few minutes here. Let's talk food real quick. And I know that we could spend a whole podcast on food.
Yeah.
Let's talk food real quick. Typically, I know that you're looking at, if you can do a good job of packing, you're looking at typically 2 pounds of food per day. So if you're going, just take 2 pounds and multiply the number of days that you're going in. And you can plan on that being about how much weight you're going to be packing in food. And so break it down a little bit for us, Ryan, as far as like your breakfast. Basically you got breakfast, your snacks, and your dinners, right?
Right. So a typical day for breakfast, lunch, or breakfast, snacks, and dinner was Heather's Choice breakfast. That was every morning. And matter of fact, there were some mornings we didn't eat breakfast. But we always had coffee. We always drank a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yep.
But those Heather's Choice breakfasts are super light. They're 4 ounces each, and they have good protein in them, good fat, good calories. So that was our breakfast. And I'll jump to dinner. We had basically Heather's Choice dinners as well, and we had these little coconut oil packets at Trader Joe's. And so I brought enough for both of us, and those came in really handy. You could just dump those inside your meal after it's heated up, and that just adds a couple hundred more calories to it.
Yep.
Another thing we like to do is take tortillas. So we have a tortilla with every dinner meal as well. So that is something we've been doing for quite a while.
Yep.
And then, so that's our dinner. Between breakfast and dinner, we always have trail mix. I usually make my own. I'll just grab a bunch of different types of nuts, cashews, macadamia nuts have a really high fat ratio in them. Almonds. I don't like peanuts very much, so I don't put peanuts in there, but pistachios, those kind of things. And then I'll get some dried fruit and put some dried fruit in there, and I usually put some M&Ms in there too, some almond M&Ms or something. That's my trail mix, and I usually put about 4 or 5 ounces in per bag.
Yep. Per day.
Yeah, per day.
Someone said to me I think it was Jesse Wise said the other day. So if you don't want to feel guilty about eating a family-sized bag of peanut M&Ms, just put it in a trail mix.
That's right. Yeah. So I have like a protein bar or like a Pro Bar, a company called Pro Bar Meal Bar. I always have something like that. Packaroon. We ate a package of packaroons a day.
Yep.
And I usually have about 2 bars a day. 2 bars, trail mix, packaroons, and then we actually did tortillas with salami and cheese too, didn't we?
That's right. Tortillas, salami, and cheese. And what we've done, tortillas with peanut butter and bacon. We've done tortillas or bagels with salami and cheese.
Yep. What do you think about the bagel versus the tortilla? For me, the bagel was almost I don't know, too much. It just took too much water to drink, and I'm pretty conscious about how much water I'm drinking. Not in the fact that I don't want to drink too much water, because that means then we got to go get water.
Yeah.
So I don't like to eat food that just dries you up and you have to drink water just to get it down your throat. So the bagel, to me, I won't do bagel on a drop hunt, on a backpack hunt that's 12 days long. Now, base camp hunt, sure, I'll do bagels where water's not an issue.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%.
Yeah.
Bagels are just too much for me. There's too much bread. I mean, it's fine as far as like calorically. I think it's probably a good idea, but when you kind of weigh it out, like you said, how much water does it take? And typically, if you're backcountry hunting, you don't want to have to drink water just because of your food choices.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think the tortilla is the way to go. I also think that, having a variety is the way to go as well. So what are the things that, like, I can tell you for me, the things that I consider when packing my food? I consider, exactly how many calories am I going to get per day, and will I eat it? Before it was like, the first time we went out and went this multi-day backpack, hunt, I typically, we way undershot our calories, and we ate basically the same thing every single day for snacks. Since then, we've kind of had enough experiences to know that, there's only really two things. You got to get enough calories, and in order to get those calories, you got to eat it. And so I think it's important to bring food that you like, you typically like. You better really like it when you're not hunting, because if you eat it every day for 6-7 days, and you kind of like it, then you're not going to like it by that 5th or 6th day. And the other thing that I would say is that I like to do is bring some sort of candy bar, like Snickers, or even like some quick chews, like whether it be like gummy bears, or even those those energy chews from, I think Gatorade makes them. I think just about everybody makes them, but something that's kind of a candy sugary treat that you can use not just for like after you make a summit, or halfway through a summit, or you're really dragging butt at about 1 o'clock at night doing a pack out, but something for quick energy, but also something that's really easy to get down. It tastes good. It goes down real easy, and it'll give you a shot of energy. And is a good mix up when you're just tired, when you can't eat another handful of trail mix,
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking about all the lessons learned here on my food, and the number one lesson learned was bring more Snickers bars, because I brought 4 of them for 12 days. You brought 1 for every day. I can't tell you how jealous I was when I'd look over and you'd be throwing down a Snickers bar. I'm like, oh my God, that looks so good right now. And
what happened that one day that you were like, what the heck was it? I was like, here's some Snickers bar, or I gave you some of my Snickers bar. And remember, we were on our way back after the ram that you passed up. Remember, we saw that ram way out there. We went out there, and on the way back, it was like 10:30 or something. And you were starving. And Ryan and I have hunted enough together to know this, that Ryan does not function at all without food, and Kenton does not function at all without sleep. So when Ryan gets hungry, I feed him. When I get tired, Ryan just stops and I fall down and take a nap. That's just the way it works. So, right? Remember that? You were like, there was something. Man, I'm hungry, and I said I gave you like half my Snickers bar, and then like you were supposed to give me something in return, and like you were like, oh, sorry, I forgot, or something like that.
No, you gave me. It's one of those. They don't make king size Snickers anymore. It's basically like 2.
Yeah.
two 3/4 size Snickers bars in one package.
Yeah.
And you handed it to me, and I'm like, and I think I may have said, I'll give you this other half. And
that's
you
right.
you got doing something like getting water. So we were down by that creek, and by the time you got back from getting water, I ate both of them. I'm like, dude, I'm sorry, I ate.
That's right.
I ate both. It was gone. Oh my god, it tasted so good. I didn't want to share it.
So moral of the story: bring more Snickers bars. That's funny.
Yeah.
I do. I bring one for every day because it's a good way. And I've had lots of hunts where I don't eat them all, but sometimes you want them.
They're morale boosters.
You got that right. I mean, that's a good, for instance, right there. Like we were a long, long ways from camp, and you're like, here, have the Snickers bar, and we were ready to go.
Yeah. The other big lesson for me was I did bring some nut butters, like some nut butters in the little packages.
Yeah.
And those are great when it's warm out, but when it gets cold out, those nut butters get so hard, and you can't even hardly freaking squeeze them out of a little bag.
Oh, right.
And so I would rather just do trail mix and eat the nuts rather than try to squeeze nut butter out of those little bags. That's just my personal opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Okay, so let's wrap this up real quick. Like I said, we could spend a lot of time on how many calories are you looking for per day?
So I'm looking at my spreadsheet here, and all the food that we brought, we averaged 3,900 calories a day.
And we were good, right?
Yeah.
That's what I felt like we were good. We walked out of there with food.
This is the best I've ever felt after a sheep hunt.
Yeah, I think we by far the least amount of weight I've ever lost, and the most work we've ever done.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So that sheep hunting. But you know what? We did decide at the very beginning, you guys, that we weren't going to get too crazy with like, we need to cut something out of our pack because it's too heavy, and we got to keep our packs under 60 pounds. What we did was we trained our butts off and said we're not leaving anything behind. If we don't need it, then we're not going to bring it. But if we need it, we're going to bring it. We're not going to starve ourselves or go without something because we feel like it's just going to be too much to pack around. In fact, our packs were like at the beginning 70 to 75 pounds. I know that on the scale at Terry's house, I think they said 80 pounds, but I'd like to believe that scale might have been a little bit heavy.
Yeah.
We did way more work, covered way more miles, carried way more weight. We had a pack out that I think was 22 hours total that we ended up having to pack out there at the end. And we walked out of there with food. So, that packing list for food is a really good baseline. If nothing else, it's a really good baseline and gives you an idea about how much food you need per day in order to get 3,900 calories. So before we wrap up the food part, Ryan, I did want to just bring everybody back to the whole idea of, on a drop hunt anyway, making sure that, like what we did was we got fresh peppers and onion, and we got some instant potatoes, and we got some food that wasn't backpack food, and we left it in this bear-proof cooler at the strip, so that when we got everything back, the day that we got up, that we were going to go to, we were getting picked up, we were able to make, a sheep back strap breakfast with all these fresh vegetables, and we got like the potatoes, and I mean, that was so key. It was so key to be able to do that. And that was the second time we had done that.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was such a great meal. As anybody knows, whenever you eat fresh meat in the mountains, it's always the best meal you've ever had, right? And this was no different. And that is something that we'll do every time we go on one of these fly-in hunts for sure.
Yeah. And you guys, I know, like we got to jump off this podcast, but typically, I know that we talked a lot about sheep hunting, but I think that in the hunting world, there's a lot of transfer from a sheep hunt to any hunt, really, as far as like a mountain hunt. They typically will say, man, if you get into sheep shape, you can do any hunt. And I think there's a lot of truth to that, in that those extreme hunts like that up in Alaska, if you're ready for those physically, then typically you're going to be ready physically for a mountain elk hunt or a mountain mule deer hunt, anything like that. So I say that because I know we talked a lot about sheep hunting, and this packing list is for sheep hunt and an Alaskan moose hunt. And you might be asking yourself, well, how does that even, how does that pertain to my mule deer hunt that I'm doing in Colorado, or my elk hunt that I'm doing in Idaho, or whatever? This gear is transferable. This advice is transferable. And everything that we talked about that we did and took on the sheep hunts, if you use those same principles and that same gear and those same ideas on a Western mountain hunt, you're gonna have success, and you're gonna be glad that you did. Because typically the terrain, I can tell you from being in Alaska a number of times, Ryan, maybe you can help me out with this. If you go on if you go probably on like a Utah or a Nevada or areas in Colorado, areas in Idaho, Oregon, it's not like Alaska is so much steeper and crazier than these areas. That typically, if you can hunt areas of Oregon or Montana or some spots in some of these other Western states, then you'll be prepared for a sheep hunt too. So use this advice, use this gear list as a good baseline for deciding on what gear you want to take on your next hunt, whether it be a multi-day hunt, a base camp hunt, or or even a weekend warrior, maybe just an overnighter. Hopefully you got a little bit out of this. What do you think about that, Ryan? You think there's a ton of transfer there?
Oh, for sure. That the advice that was given to me when I was getting ready to do my first sheep hunt is not advice, but I guess the comfort that somebody had assured me is, you grew up hunting elk in North Idaho, you can hunt sheep in Alaska. It's not that much different.
Yeah.
It's just not. So if you're out there hunting elk in Colorado, one of these western states, or mule deer, you can do a sheep hunt. And so just take the word sheep and transfer it to elk or mule deer, whatever you're hunting out there. It's just about living out of your backpack for multiple days in a row. That's all it is.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you guys, hey, appreciate everybody listening. If you have any questions, you can shoot those questions over on our Facebook page, or you can shoot those at Kenton at traintohunt.com, or Ryan, RYAN, at traintohunt.com. You can shoot us some questions. We'd be more than happy to help you out. It's something that we enjoy doing, something we spent hours and hours on the phone talking about. And we just appreciate you guys listening. And unless you got any concluders, Ryan, I'm gonna call her good.
No, I think we covered everything. Thanks, Kenton.
You bet. All right, you guys. Happy hunting.